Yeah, well, if we had mics, I mean.
Yeah, it would be so nice if we had mics, wouldn't it?
Welcome back to the Spicy Dog Podcast,
Spicy.
where we don't have mics. We're going to talk about common myths that you hear revolving, like balance training.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What would you guys say is like the number one thing that people are told they should be concerned about?
That it
balance
will
training?
make a dog anxious or aggressive.
Yeah. You hear that one a lot.
Yeah.
I think that stems from like the overall, like, it'll ruin their relationship with you. Or maybe that's a little different.
Yeah.
But with the anxiety and the aggression and stuff, I mean, I'll just start out with a big, nice, generalized statement that, like, everyone seems to have these mystical, imaginary things that are going to happen as, like, fallout from balance training, and I've never fucking seen it. I've been doing this for almost 10 years. I've never seen it. Where is it? Someone give me an actual case where it happens.
Yeah.
When it's done properly.
I think there's not a lot of research on that, or like the force-free side will say that there's all these like peer-reviewed studies, and in the studies, nothing like it's just done in a way that doesn't make any practical sense. Yeah, it's biased and it's done in a way that's not making the dog successful. And I think they're just testing the e-collar. I don't know if they're doing any training or teaching a dog with the e-collar.
And that was like, I think it was Tyler Muto. I just saw a video clip of him on a podcast where he was talking about how it's so nuanced testing the use of punishment in training because it is so relationship and context based that it's like, yeah, if you take a random animal and a random human and you add random punishment for certain things, like, and you don't have all of the backing that comes before you would actually do that in a typical dog training setting, of course you're going to have, like, some weird results because there's no relationship there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, it's something that is so difficult to, like, test and do research on because it's so hard to cultivate, like, a real life setting and replicate it a ton of times in a controlled enough way to be able to run, like, a typical trial type thing for it.
Yeah. And it's just like an agenda mindset, I feel like. So if you're already disagreeing with the use of balance tools, or you think people that use e-collars are piece of shit animal abusers, you're going to have a pair of glasses that you're seeing the situation through. And anything that the dog is displaying, whether that's nervous behaviors that the dog already was exhibiting before training, people look at that and they're like, oh my God, the e-collar caused this dog to be anxious. And I was like, this dog was a fucking disaster before it ever stepped in to some training. And, you know, like Steve is a perfect example. I know I've talked about Steve a lot, but we got a lot of flack on a video of him recently. And that was his first session before the e-collar was on. And people were just livid about how I had handled that situation. But this dog is a dog that, like, literally was injuring his owners over being in this reactive state. And through e-collar training, she's able to go to Lakewood Park now, and that was something she dreamed about, like, a year ago. So this fallout that people are saying that they're seeing, like, oh, it's eventually going to happen. When? When's it going to happen?
When is it going to happen?
The dog is just one day going to be like, I'm so depressed.
I'm
sad.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it doesn't account for, like, and I think there's a lot of, you have to think about correlation versus causation as well. They're not the same. Just because something can be happening simultaneously does not mean one is causing the other. I think it's very convenient for people to see a dog who maybe has done e-collar training or balance training, and as the dog is just organically, naturally maturing and changing, and maybe their genetics are coming out a little bit, they're maturing into an adolescent or a young adult dog who had a genetic predisposition towards some anxiety or some temperament issues or things like that. It's so easy for people to look at that and be like, e-collar, that's why. You fucked up your dog.
Yeah, and it's an unrepairable relationship that can never be like repaired after you use the e-collar.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely not true. And I found time and time again the methods that we're using heed results. And
for sure.
Time and time again, I'm seeing my methods in my training actively be able to translate into opening a dog's life up. Mm-hmm. So I'm not seeing this fallout. I'm not seeing these dogs get really depressed. I'm seeing owners being empowered. I'm seeing owners being able to go to the park and doing things that they never imagined that they would be able to do with their dogs prior to training.
Yeah.
Because the e-collar provides such a beautiful way of communicating with your dog. And of course, if you do it wrong and you are too harsh or you don't know how to use an e-collar, yes, you can maybe cause some confusion, but ultimately, like the e-collar correction, it's there and it's gone. It's not a long-lasting thing.
And it provides clarity if you're doing it right.
Yeah.
So again, I think the emphasis is on like if you're gonna give me a case that a dog was like trained with balanced methods or tools, and now they have a really like confused dog or whatever, like again, they're not doing it right. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't come down to, oh, that person like it's balance training that messed with the dog. It's no, you're just a shitty dog trainer. You just didn't do it well.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what methods you're using. You just didn't do it well.
Or your timing is off. Or
exactly. So it's like the fallout that like you could see from someone doing balance methods and using punishment and getting adverse results is, I'd say the number one biggest thing is correcting the dog before it has a full understanding of why it's getting corrected for like commands. So like the dog has to have a known behavior, a known command before you can correct for non-compliance. I think correcting for non-compliance too soon, yes, can yield bad results. And again, that's just, as a dog trainer, you need to know that. And
that's
then
kind of what you were saying with just like, if they don't know why they're getting this punishment, just like anyone else, like
it's confusing. Yeah, I mean, you think of like a kid as a parallel that I always use a lot of my clients help them understand is that when you're teaching a kid, say, how to do a chore around the house, like if I want a kid to learn how to load the dishwasher and do all those things, I'm not going to tell them to load the dishwasher for the first time, come back, they've done everything wrong, it's bubbling over, it's exploding, and being like, oh my gosh, how dare you, and then get mad at them.
Yeah.
No, it's my job to walk them through step by step how to do it properly, do that multiple times, a ton of times, and then one day, if it's a known thing they know how to do and they're just being silly and they do it wrong and then they flood the kitchen, okay, then maybe you could get in trouble because you knew better than that at that point. But it's not fair to immediately go to correcting a dog if they don't understand the behavior or what's expected of them.
Yeah.
And so I could see that as being a main reason why you can see fallout happen. And then as far as like other things, I think it would be the only other big one I can think of is starting to correct for something. Never getting clarity in what you're correcting the dog for and what you wanted them to do and just giving up.
Yeah, you like half-ass it.
Or people are like, oh, it didn't work because my dog yelped or my dog had a, pretty big reaction to something. And if you're, like David was saying, if you're really inconsistent about, like sometimes you correct, sometimes you don't correct, that's causing so much more frustration, and it's not the tool itself, it's you
it's
you're
the
not
psychological effects that you're having on the dog. Like if you're going to correct for jumping on people, then you better do it every single time.
Yeah.
And you better make your point and do it until the dog stops that behavior. Because if you start correcting and they keep jumping and they're feeling it and they keep jumping and whatever the situation is and you stop because, oh, it's just not working, you used a negative reinforcement. You didn't use positive punishment. So all you're doing is teaching the dog to continue to push through pressure to ultimately still get what they want. And then the next time that happens, they're going to be even more determined to jump on that person because you reinforce the behavior using pressure instead of shutting it down. So it's like if you are going to start something, you have to follow through and finish it to get the clarity, or else your dog is going to be so much more confused the next time. And you just don't even do it in the first place then.
It's like you always, like I truly have the belief that you should work with a professional trainer to use an e-collar as a tool, because I think there's so many nuances with it that it can be so confusing. And the things you look up on the internet, everything's like so wish-washy, and sometimes cases are dog dependent of how we'll use the e-collar or how we'll teach it to a specific owner or the things that we do. So it's best to get like a true training program or getting, you know, like some people do like those really nice online programs and just educating yourself about what it does and that it's not going to burn your dog and that it's not going to cause lifelong psychological damage.
Yeah, or like not to cut you off, but like the burning, that made me think of another myth is like the physical danger of an e-collar. I saw this absurd video on TikTok the other day where this woman stitched a video of a girl training with an e-collar and said, this e-collar, it was like a mini educator. It wasn't like some shitty e-collar from Amazon. It was a mini educator. She was like, this e-collar could cause this dog to have seizures. This e-collar could cause this dog to go into so much stress and panic that it has a heart attack and it dies. Like making these insane claims about an e-collar.
Yeah.
That's just wild to me.
Yeah, that's a little much.
Like, absolutely wild that you could sit there and deliberately just spew absolute garbage that has no backing whatsoever at all.
I think the catch is that, like, obviously people love their dogs, right? And so it gets to this point, this is where people, like, feed into that for them to get them kind of on their side, is that, like, you love your dogs, so obviously, yes, you don't want to be, like, punishing them or whatever, but you know, parents love their kids doesn't mean that there aren't consequences to their actions. You know what I mean? And I think that's where if people can think in that sort of way, at least it gears them into like somewhat of an understanding of, okay, I kind of get that, right? I get that point. But your kids at 4 months old or a year old aren't potentially killing people or other dogs or, you know what I mean? So it's like, so sometimes that punishment has to be a little bit more stronger enforced than your 1-year-old just kind of like moving around,
and
you know?
You can't reason with a dog.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like you might have a kid that you can like be pretty lenient with because you can explain things to them and talk to them and because you're the same species.
They have a human experience versus a dog experience.
Yes.
And it is not the same.
How do dogs like sit and talk things out?
No.
No.
They don't.
There was a video that I'm sorry, I'm like on one today, guys.
Go for it.
I don't know.
That's what we're here for.
I've been coming on a little strong. It's like you're just a shitty dog trainer. Anyways. But like I saw this video that demonstrates this perfectly. It was the cutest video. It was this like old man golden retriever laying down on the floor and this puppy comes like running in, just flopping everywhere and just jumps right on this dog's head. Just jumps right on his head and then bounces off and the older dog goes woof and just like barks right in his face and he just sits down. And then just lay down and relax. And it's like that's what they do. Yeah. That was an aversive experience for that puppy. Yeah. That was very alarming. That dog was like, oh my God. Okay,
but did that dog know that was bad?
Yeah.
No.
Behavior is just behavior to dogs, and they have no way to determine what is good or what is bad because they don't have a morality system. Right. And it's your job to be like, I don't like this specific behavior my dog is displaying. So let's teach a learning system. Let's teach a clear yes, and let's teach a clear no. Yes. So our dog can get with the fucking program.
Yes.
And they have something to be. I'd much rather be a dependable owner than a wish-washy owner. And my dog's like, am I going to get the correction? Rather than if I consistently correct for a behavior I don't like for a span of a couple of days, a couple of weeks, I don't have to correct for that behavior long term because the behavior stops happening.
Yep. Right. And so that puppy in that moment learned, oh, that is not acceptable. When I'm excited and I'm running around, I'm having a good time, I need to be more aware of their physical boundaries. Cool. And we'll have that going forward next time.
And even to that point then, because it's such a clear communication of it's not the running around that's bad. It's jumping on my head.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So then the puppy, next time he lays down, he was probably like letting the wheels turn, like, what was that correction? Mm-hmm. He's a puppy, so eventually he's going to get up, he's going to start running around again, he's going to realize, okay, that clearly wasn't it, but if he bumps into the old guy again or hops on his head again and he gets that same correction, again, repeated corrections, you're going to be like,
the same
got it.
Consistent behavior.
That's what it is. Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's where I find that just like the e-collar is just so important, with just creating such a clear, firm correction, right? Or just communication, answer for the dog.
Yeah, the timing.
Yeah.
When dogs communicate, their timing is perfect.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like they set the boundaries immediately when it happens. And so there's no confusion. Again, I'm talking about a dog, like dogs that are stable and communicate well and all that kind of stuff. Their timing is really, really good. So when they're interacting as a group, there's not this overwhelming sense of like, oh no, who's going to pop off? Who's going to do that? Because they know, okay, that dog, stay out of his way. Okay, that dog, they like to play. That dog, this. And the way they figure that out is by just exploring their options and getting feedback and learning. Mm-hmm. So like with Cash even, I've always found it funny that when Cash is around like young dogs, they just stay away from him. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like he walks through a group of dogs and they just like go away.
So he's like Jesus.
Yeah, they like part the seas for him. And he just walks with this energy and this authority of like, I am not interested. Mm-hmm. And so they just respect that. And as they go up and they get in his space, he corrects them and he lets them know, I'm not a puppy guy. Right. Leave me alone, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that it's so unfair that we are removing the ability for a dog to learn as naturally as we possibly could because it just makes us feel bad.
Right.
It's playing on the human emotion side of things, and because of social media, people are so critical of one another and they have to have an opinion on the narrative that they're pushing, which is if you use an e-collar, then you don't understand real dog training. You have some lack of intelligence. There's something wrong with your training because I could do this with positive reinforcement alone.
Then go do it.
Where are your videos?
Leave me alone.
Where are your results?
Right.
I don't see them. It's funny. It's really funny there,
guys.
It's
a nice, bold claim to be able to make with nothing to back it up.
Yes. So we see that a lot, and like I myself am trying to not be as critical. I'm not a comment leaver anymore. Like I used to kind of be into that.
Yeah.
And like on TikTok, politely I would get into a couple arguments with people, and I'm like, why the hell am I wasting my time?
There's no point.
Why am I spending a couple seconds out of my day or moments like giving energy to people that are never going to agree with me? Mm-hmm. And it is not my job to change your mind or preach that I like e-collar. If your training methods are working for you, more power to you. But don't come and give these like bold statements that are fear-mongering people away from the tool. Because it is a beautiful tool when used effectively. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've learned that like anybody who wants to engage in discourse on the internet doesn't give a fuck about changing their opinion. No. The opinions change and like people grow and learn from each other when you do this.
Yeah, when you have a discussion.
And you have a discussion. That doesn't happen on the internet. Mm-hmm. When people are just sitting there and just twiddling their thumbs, being bored because they have nothing better to do, because they don't have dogs to train.
Some people just like to start the fight.
Yeah, it's like don't even waste your time with people like that on the internet because it's not even worth it. Another one I think is like the myth that your dog will become more aggressive with using e-collar training. It'll ruin your relationship. They'll become aggressive towards you. Blah blah blah. And here's the thing, I'm not denying that there's people that their dog has become aggressive towards them because of maybe trying to implement corrections or punishments. The thing, again, the caveat is that you're doing it wrong.
And it's a relationship thing. It's not a singular thing that we can nail down to the e-collar alone. It's that your dog doesn't really respect you.
Yes.
And you go into it without really setting up any, expectations for the dog. So when we go to correct them, there's a lot of frustration that comes from that, and the dogs end up redirecting. And that's not all dogs. Yeah. That's not every dog, but there is a certain kind of dog that will redirect, and that is not solely based on the e-collar correction alone.
Yeah. To me, there's two types of dogs that will redirect if you have not been consistent and clear and confident in giving your corrections and given meaningful enough corrections.
Yeah.
You leave room for them to argue with you if you half-ass it.
That's what I was going to say.
And the two personality types I see is you either have dogs that are very fearful, and getting a correction becomes a source of fear for them because it amplifies their nervousness and their insecurity and their confusion. So it's like they're already freaked out, they're already nervous, they're already confused. They don't know why they're getting corrected, and so you become the target, and they channel all of that towards you. The other type is just the very dominant dogs. Very dominant, and they don't give a fuck about you. If they don't respect you and you haven't taken the time to get the respect and handled it properly, then they have no problem returning the favor and saying, you're not going to speak to me like that.
Well, how many times, again, to relate it to dogs, right? In a social, you get a dog that corrects another dog, and then that dog looks at them and like, I don't think so, and they go after them, right?
Yeah.
It's exactly what it is. It's you're not tougher than I am, so I'm going to come back at you, right, just as hard. And that's exactly what you see with that kind of dog, at least.
Oh, yeah.
Is that, like, again, it's not the tool itself that's doing it, it's the lack of communication of, these are the rules that we're implementing here, right? And you trying to retaliate is not going to be acceptable.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the longer you do that, and I think that's why a lot of dog trainers potentially maybe are apprehensive about showing corrections just blatantly on the internet. It's not because we're not ashamed of it.
Yeah.
It's that we don't know who's going to try to do this with what kind of dog.
Yeah.
And so it's like you don't want to put somebody in a position where they could end up injured or have something happen because it's so nuanced. You know what I mean?
Taken out of context just so easily.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because again, you don't know the background of what that dog was like, what the owners. You just don't know any of the pieces of the puzzle.
Yeah,
and it's also individual.
And it's like in our 10-session program, the short form content that's posted is such a rare, small little clip of that dog in the time frame of our 10 sessions. And you don't know, like, I think I listened to Jeff Gilman recently, and it was on Dog Dead, and he's like, you don't know how he trains. You're only seeing this one picture. You don't know that he doesn't use a lot of positive reinforcement. And because of the internet and the way things are, they're seeing these short clips, and they're like, oh my God, that you're using that dog. It's like, you don't know my journey with the dog. You don't know my journey with the owner. You don't know where I'm implementing my rewards. And I'm very reward-based. I love positive reinforcement. And I think we all have a really good basis of doing that when it is, when we can.
Yeah.
But it's also equally as important to show punishment when it's the time and place, and implementing that into our programs.
Yeah, I agree. And because one of my critiques of the whole dog daddy thing is that I can't have an opinion one way or the other because I don't know how he trains because he doesn't post anything about it, which is what's frustrating. It's like he has a YouTube channel, and I just recently saw him advertise that he did post like a long form start to finish training a dog video, which I haven't watched it, but I want to.
Yeah.
Because that's been my criticism of him this whole time, is that it'd be so easy for him to at least quell some of the craziness if he just posted a video of him actually training a dog. Because he's not in any of his videos. He's like Jeff said, you're seeing step one of just getting the dog.
Yeah.
But again, he likes there's a part of him clearly that likes the infamy, that likes the hot button topics, that likes the, all of that kind of stuff. So there's a method to it. He says he doesn't want to be an influencer, but like that tells differently.
I think it'd be like for him, showing that would almost be breaking character, and part of the allure of some of these social media people is they don't break character, and that's what makes them so interesting. And they're such a hot topic. And again, like I don't have an opinion on Dog Daddy because I don't know the way he trains, and I haven't worked with him. So for me to be super critical, like, I don't know. So
because it's like all I'm seeing is him taking a dog who is, I don't think he's triggering it. We've already addressed that. But it's like he's taking a dog and then getting them under control, and that's it. That's all we get to see. It's like, okay, then what do you do after that? Because that's like such a small fraction of the thing.
That's one or a couple repetitions of like, okay, then you hand it back to the owners. What happens after that?
But, the robotic thing. I did recently, I had a client recently start that said that at the beginning, that they were like, we really don't want him to be a robot, all this kind of stuff. What are your guys' thoughts on all of that? Because that's a very common one, I think.
I think, I was telling you that I was having a discussion with a client the other day, and their dogs were getting into fights, and prior to coming to our training program or reaching out, they spoke to their vet, and the vet was like, all right, we're going to do a full blood panel, we're going to test every gene in those dogs' bodies, and we're going to find out why they're fighting through blood work and urine samples. And it's going to be $4,000 for the both of them.
Year,
that's what I was waiting for the price.
$4,000, and they're like, and then we'll probably put them both on trazodone, but we're going to give you the trazodone before. And they said,
but what's the point of the blood work if they're going to give them the meds before it?
Yeah, they said they gave the dog trazodone, and the dog's personality was like a zombie. She was not there. She was not herself. And for people to think that medicating and drugging your dog is not actively making your dog a zombie is ridiculous.
/ robot, which is like what they paint as like a big concern with collar training.
I've never seen a dog act robotic. I've seen robust dogs that have clear expectations and that we can like be silly with or give like run time or cool walks.
Right. My experience with it is that like, you get, I've had situations where owners are confused as to why they're not so excited. And that comes with, the jumping and everything. And it's like, well,
are they excited or just erratic?
Right. It's the jumping and the barking and the whatever flailing around stuff. It's like, you don't necessarily need that for them to feel excited or whatever, right? It's just, that's one that's always kind of caught me off guard too, is like,
he looks sad.
Right. Like,
and they're just like,
and meanwhile,
right. Like Mac over here, he's just passed out.
Over there.
And people could look at this dog and be like, oh, he's a robot.
Right.
It's like, no, this is the most peaceful creature.
Yes.
Look at him. No, I completely agree with you. I was going to bring up that point too, Seamus, where it's like, what do you consider a robot?
Right.
What is your definition?
Because a calm behaved dog is not a robot. That's a calm behaved dog.
A behaved dog.
Right.
I can't get those results. So
when my dog's excited, he freaks out. So clearly your dog is not excited.
And maybe some people, their definition of robot, and I think maybe what this new client I have and they had a horrible experience with a training company prior to this, where their dog was like in the ICU after the board and train and almost died because it was so dehydrated, and so like absolutely traumatic and terrible. And so like all of their concerns I 100% understand. They've been very much betrayed and by the dog industry, so I 100% get it. And I feel like the way they presented it to me had more of the air of like a dog who doesn't do anything without like being told to do it. Doesn't have like a natural air of like a dog existing to them. And I wonder, so my theory, again, correlation, causation, is that I think a lot of the dogs that maybe people see being trained with e-collars are very high drive, very intense, naturally sharp and almost robotic looking dogs. that tend to derive their fulfillment from listening to their handler. Mm-hmm. So like Lumos, one of the biggest critiques I got with him when he was young, and he had a ton more energy in him when we were working, was that he looked like a robot. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's not that he's a robot, he's just like robotic in how he moves. That's just kind of naturally how they are. Like you watch any...
He's just quick to snap. He's just like, I move here to here.
Yes, and like if you watch any like really high drive, high energy dogs, when they're very sharp on everything they're doing and very precise, it could read as robotic. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, if you take it a step further and it's like a border collie personality or a Malinois personality where they're just like, what do you want me to do? I'll do it. Because you have food or a toy or something that's very valuable to them, or they just want to please you, that can come across as like the dog is scared to do anything without you telling them to do it type of thing. I see. So I think some people maybe look at it that way. And again, I think that just because you see a lot of dogs trained with e-collars that looked like that, I think it's less about the e-collar causing that and more about those are the type of dogs that are in environments or being used for sports or lifestyles or jobs that an e-collar is the most practical way to train. Yeah. So it's like, there's some correlation there, but that doesn't mean it caused it. Yeah. Type of thing.
Like, even with other motivators, like, when I use food with Sunday, she's entranced by me in every movement that I make, that she's, like, looking at me, and she almost looks like animatronic.
She really does. Her head, like, goes like this, almost a little bit.
Because she wants that food so bad that she's, like, giving me her full attention. She's like, what do I need to do
you can see to give me that everything food? Turning in her head of, like, okay, let's readjust, let's reevaluate. Well, and so then also going back to the medication real quick too, that's something as well that I get certain medications obviously are good, but when it comes to the point of giving your dog so much that they become not that dog, just to mask like, well, I hope the vet can give it a shot, like, I think that's so bad. And I think we've talked about this before, but even I think that to a point, you drugging your dog only actually causes more harm because it puts them in this sober state of mind, which I think we've talked about too. But that's just always been one thing that
it's a Band-Aid.
I couldn't wrap my head around that.
Like a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. It doesn't accomplish anything. And yes, it can like physically change your dog's behavior or them presenting as this neurotic or whatever you're giving them the medication for, aggression. But it's not solving anything. And soon enough, you're going to have to up that dose more and more and more. Mm-hmm. And you're not heeding any results from it. So like, what's the point?
Right. It's not fixing it, it's masking it. You're right.
Well,
people
part
get
of it
so
is
upset about that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, part of it too is like the hypocritical aspect of it for me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, like the actual physical, practical applications of it is upsetting, but like the people who are telling you that, balance training will make your dog a zombie or robotic are the same people saying like, give them Prozac, give them Trazodone, give them gabapentin, give them this. It's like, what? Mm-hmm. You'd rather like medicalize a dog than to teach them proper coping skills through like very natural communication.
Yeah.
So it's just wild to me.
And there's like I discussed before, like there's just so much of our program that the internet doesn't see. So when people are super critical, I've learned to just like be like, you don't know the situation, you don't know the context of anything, you don't know the successes I've had with this dog, you don't see the owners.
And if you ask the questions, then I'm totally open with talking about it. I have nothing to hide in terms of what we do here, right? Like you were saying, we don't show everything because we just can't, but like at the time, Paige can't always be following all of us around, but it's something that if you have a question, that's one thing. If you're just blatantly coming at me just because of how I train my dogs, then I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
right?
You can tell the difference between people who actually want to have like a healthy discourse and people who just want to like, feel tough.
People that have heard from the one side and they're like, okay, cool, I get that, I think like that, and then they're like, but let's see what the other side says too, right? And that's where again, I think you could choose to be super defensive on anyone that comes at you, and then it looks like you have something to hide or like you're doing something wrong, or you can have this mindset of kind of what we're doing today, where it's just like, we're just laying out the facts of like this is our experiences with using these tools, and that's why we're doing this today. This is why we want to share this, so that we can kind of share that light for those people that
are questioning things or Googling things, and they're seeing all these negative comments, and then they're not getting the help they need. And it's okay if you're trained differently. It's okay if you don't use an e-collar, but like, don't talk about something you don't know anything about.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's what that's why I thought today's topic was very good, because it's something that we can at least try to debunk.
There's a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to balance training in general. Like, another myth that I want to talk about is like that, like going back to the robot thing, that we don't allow our dogs to have fun, or you don't allow a dog to be a dog. And I had an interesting comment recently that I just wanted to discuss, but I think somebody was trying to get me like a gotcha moment, because recently we had 2 clips back to back, and one was talking about Sunday scent work and how I love to allow her to smell in that class and use her nose. And then I think the next clip we posted was like me talking about not allowing a dog to smell on a walk. And to clarify for the person that asked, training my dog, my fully trained dog, to be in a scent work program is entirely different than teaching a dog with behavioral issues to focus in with me on a walk. And it's just a whole different ballgame.
Completely.
So I can
apples
completely.
Oranges.
Yes. And I still like pride myself on being able to give my dogs a very full life because of the training that I use. And I'm able to do that scent work class because Sunday has training under her belt. Because you see, like, she's very well trained, but at scent work, she's wild. Yep. She is ready to smell that. Even the instructor got her, and she's like, she's really tenacious. And she was like, I want to smell those boxes.
I get it.
Yes.
And without like some form of management with that, she'd be running around that whole ring.
Oh yeah. If anything, we let our dog. I can do far more with my dog than I bet anyone who doesn't do balance training.
Yeah.
Without some other type of management in there.
Yeah.
I mean, my dogs are able to live an incredible life. Lumos being able to be in that setting that he was at that class last week with all of those people and all of those dogs in close proximity to him and him not caring would have been impossible had I not used Punish It with him in training.
Yeah.
It would not have happened. And like with Snoop, there's no way he would be running around fields off leash without punishment or balance training. So like to say that like we don't let our dogs be dogs is that one I can't even wrap my head around. And my dog gets to be a dog way more than your dog does get to.
And it's like the argument of like, oh well, you don't need e-collars, you can use a long line. I don't want to fucking tangle ass long line with my multiple dogs.
And you know what happens when Snoop
Sunday doing laps around?
Yeah.
Well, and what happens when they hit the end of the leash and then you know what I mean? Like, come on. Let's use our brains, guys.
Right. Well, again, you still don't. If you need to use the long line, you still don't have that communication, that control, right?
Yes.
All it takes is a squirrel, and then.
Well, which is another myth we can touch. I have like 2 more that I want to touch on that I've thought on really quick. One of them is that you need to rely on the e-collar forever. Okay?
That's a good one.
You need to rely on it forever. Your dog isn't trained. It's just the e-collar that's just making them be trained. They're just scared of the e-collar. And here's the thing. And people will be like, oh, there's this new trend of like arguing on like, is a dog ever really trained if you have to still use tools or management things with it? Like the management, like that dog is just managed versus that dog is trained. A dog is only trained if it can do everything without tools, without any kind of ever. I don't care. That's like a stupid argument to me. Can my dog do the things? Can it go through life and be safe and everybody else be safe and then have a good life? That's all I really care about.
Right.
And to me, if that means my dog has to wear an e-collar every time they go outside off leash, okay.
Yeah.
Your dog has to go outside wearing a long line.
Yeah, or a leash.
Or a leash, or a harness, or a head halty, or a martingale, or a prong collar. Like, I think it's stupid to say that, like, because you use an e-collar long-term in certain settings for the duration of the dog's life, that's like an insult.
Yeah.
I'm not insulted by that. Yes, I do that because I want to keep my dog safe.
Yeah.
And it's not that the dog... If your dog has a visceral or an adverse reaction to seeing your remote or seeing whatever, that's a bigger... You have an issue that you need to fix because that shouldn't happen. When I, like, hold this up or I pick this up, my dog should not have a reaction to that.
It shouldn't be a threatening thing that I'm like, look,
that means you're doing it wrong if that's happening.
Yeah.
That's not what this means to them. They respect the rules. They understand the boundaries. They understand the parameters they can work within because I've used this correctly to set those parameters. They're not scared of this. They're scared of doing the wrong choices, making the wrong choices. I mean, think about it. I'm not scared of driving my car, but I have a healthy fear of not running stop sign, not going 20 over the speed limit, not doing all of those things, you know?
Because there are serious consequences to those.
Yeah, exactly, as there should be.
And that's okay. Like, there's this trainer, and I can't remember who said this, but she equated, like, the training process, like how we do our month board and train or 10 one-on-one sessions. That time is going to be a little bit more rigorous and strict. And it's comparable to when an athlete is running a marathon or preparing for a sports event, that they have to be a little bit more disciplined and strict with themselves. But overall, their whole life, they're not going to work out the way they are. They're not going to eat the way that they are. But for a time being, as they're training, you have to be a little bit more strict. So there's expectations. And then throughout the rest of your dog's life, you shouldn't feel like you're giving these really high-level corrections all the time, like constantly, because you are doing something wrong. And it's a basis of just getting your dog to kind of naturally understand and have a relationship with them than it is about constantly depending on a tool for your every whim.
Yeah. I can't remember the last time I've had to correct my dog when we've been, like, on a leash off, like an off-leash hike or something.
Yeah.
I honestly can't remember. And it's not because they behave differently when the e-collar is on. I have confidence that even if they didn't have their e-collars on, they're still going to be fine. But they're animals. So it's like, why would I put my ego of being like, look how well trained my dogs are, I don't even have to use e-collars, over top of potentially them being a dog and doing a dog thing and me not having the ability to enforce something. It just doesn't make any sense.
An off-leash dog running up to Snoop.
Yeah.
And Lumos goes, I don't know that dog. Yeah. I don't know what they're going to do to my brother, but I don't like it.
There's like a million things that could happen that it would be silly to not use a training tool that my dogs understand and are confident in. The other myth is that only the really bad dogs need balance training.
And that's why, like, some companies, like, you'll see, like, sometimes I'll just go on other companies' website, and it can be like, we're going to do an evaluation to see what kind of training your dog needs. And it's just like, they're not transparent. And then those companies end up putting an e-collar on every dog. And then the people that have the e-collars are like, oh, my dog was that bad that he needed an e-collar.
Yep.
And every dog can use training. You know?
Every dog deserves good training.
Yeah. Yes. Not every single dog in the world needs to have an e-collar to listen. And if your methods are working for you, go for it. But I think it has a very effective place in training. Yeah. And it's not only for bad dogs. It's not only for aggressive dogs.
No, not at all. I think that I wish that to me, that argument exists because it's kind of this weird middle ground of, like, you're still viewing e-collar training as harsh. So it's like, yeah, I guess there's a place for it, but only with dogs who really need that like heavy hand or need something really harsh and stuff like that, where it's like, e-collar training is not harsh.
It's direct.
It's direct and it's clear, and it's like any other training program that is effective and good, and it can be a little Ivy, you know what I mean, that we just posted a bunch of videos of. Like, you could look at a tiny little puppy like that who's, you know, as they're maturing and growing and they're 6-7 months old, and be like, there's no way that dog needed an e-collar. There's no way they were that bad. No, she wasn't that bad. She's a puppy. And now she'll stay not that bad.
Yeah.
Because she has clear direction moving forward. She has, I mean, that dog goes everywhere with her. She takes her to restaurants, to patios, all that kind of stuff. We just got a new client in from a referral from her with her golden retriever puppy, because she's like, I saw Ivy and how she's able to live her life like that, and I want that with my dog. So it's like, it's a shame to me that people are hearing this information that, like, if your dog isn't that bad, you don't need e-collar training, and then they're having to limit their lives with their dogs because they're not getting good dog training.
Yeah. And it's like, again, if you view that as harsh, or you placing your human emotions on dog training, where you just have to be like very matter of fact and be like, this is a behavior that's, I don't want to see whether that's the dog is aggressive or I don't want the dog to jump on me. And both are valid to correct for, and the spectrum of behaviors, there's so many behaviors you can set up a communication system with, and it doesn't always have to be the reserved for the most bad, tough dogs. We can do a dog that's never had an aggression issue in its life and just needs some clarity on what the owners want from it.
Well, a lot of times too, I think it is interesting that with that, you know, only the worst dogs need e-collar training and stuff, is that if you talk to a lot of trainers that deal with aggression cases, a lot of times the e-collar isn't even used to directly address the aggression. You know what I mean? Like, yes, we use the e-collar for like commands and like stuff like that, and with some dogs, yes, you might be able to use e-collar corrections for aggressive behaviors, but a lot of other dogs there's different types of corrections that tend to work better. You know what I mean? So it's like that whole argument and myth in and of itself is based on like something that doesn't actually really exist in the first place.
Yeah, and there's one last thing that I'll discuss is that fuck, I just lost it. Oh, wait, okay.
Did you find it?
She's in there. She's hanging on. That we couldn't possibly train a dog without an e-collar. I know how to train a dog without an e-collar, but I'm not going to do the same things that I do with a dog that's e-collar trained. I probably will not have that dog completely off leash without a form of communication, and I resort to a long line. Do I want to do that? No. But I can.
I can still train a dog. It's just I will have to limit that dog based on how it's capable of performing.
Right.
You know what I mean? In the same way that if you said you can't train that aggressive dog without using a muzzle, I can, but I'm going to be severely limited in how far I can take them because I cannot do it safely.
Yeah.
If you said, oh, I want this dog that's aggressive towards other dogs, fear aggressive, to stop being fear aggressive towards other dogs, but you can't use a muzzle, how in the world am I going to do that? Because I can't put the dog in the situations to allow me to be able to address the issues. Oh, you can't train a dog without an e-collar. Okay, well, I can train it to a certain point. But if I don't have the e-collar available to me, it's not going to be off leash and stuff like that. So it puts an unnecessary limitation.
Yeah.
If you have that accessible to you, why would you not do it?
There just are so many myths with that we could go on for an entire day discussing, like,
I think we hit some good ones though.
Yes.
Yeah. We hit
the
big
main
ones, I feel like.
Yeah.
But any last words?
It's all fake. It's all fake. Mm-hmm. They're gaslighting you guys. They're out here saying, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, your dog's gonna hate you. Oh my gosh, you're gonna ruin your relationship. They're gonna be aggressive. They're gonna get worse. It's all fake.
It's like my cousin Becky's aunt's sister's boyfriend said that he used an e-collar once and it made the dog worse. Like, do your research, reach out to a professional that is skilled and experienced in applying an e-collar, look at their reviews, talk to them for consultation, whatever it may be.
Yes.
And let's see how you feel.
And fully commit.
Yes.
Fully commit.
Don't
half-ass it. If you are not sure that you want to do training that involves like punishment and balance methods, then just wait until you're ready to fully commit. Okay? You can have questions and be a little reserved and want clarification on things, please, by all means. But if you're going to go to your lesson, get a ton of information, good information, be told what to do, how to address things, and then go home and either not do it or half-ass it, you're not ready.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Maybe you need a little bit more time.
Yes.
But
and a good trainer will help you 100%.
With that. I'll talk you through whatever you need to talk through. Whatever questions you have, whatever concerns you have. But the hard part is that if I give you what I need you to be doing and you leave and you don't do it and then you come back and maybe you're dishonest about it, you try to say it didn't work, it got worse, it got whatever it is, just because it wasn't implemented correctly, that's just unfair to the trainer, it's unfair to your dog, it's unfair to everybody. And it really convolutes the issue. So
and we know.
We do know. Yeah. We know. So yes, really like weigh your options, make sure you're confident about your choice. And whatever choice you want to make is fine. But don't decide not to do balance training because of all these bullshit things that people are putting.
Somebody on the internet told you not to. You gotta have a better reason than that.
Yes. 100%. Somebody who doesn't even know your dog. Doesn't even know how to train a dog. They had one dog in their life.
They trained their own dog. And they did it with positive reinforcement.
And they did.
So
meanwhile, in private, they swat it on the face every time it barks out the window.
Or scream at
it.
So just do your research. Do your research. Ask your questions. It's okay to ask questions.
Yes. All right. Thanks for joining us today, guys.
Hope you have a great day, morning, or night.
Bye.